Hello, my name is Ian Lowe, and welcome to today's presentation on AI governance and architecture. Let me start with something most organizations do not want to admit. AI is not coming. It is not in your pilot program. It is not being evaluated by your innovation team. It is already in production. It is already making decisions. Right now, in real time, AI systems are processing your customer data, routing your support tickets, screening your job applicants, flagging your financial transactions, and in some cases, drafting the communications going out under your leadership team's names. And the governance around most of that? Informal at best. An acceptable use policy written 2 years ago. A checkbox in a procurement form. A conversation someone had with legal that nobody wrote down. I spent nearly 3 decades in enterprise technology before I started asking the hard questions about AI governance. And the question that keeps me up at night is not, what can AI do? It is, who is accountable when it goes wrong? Because here is what I know from the work I do: most organizations cannot answer that question. Not clearly. Not in a way that would hold up to scrutiny. That is what we are going to address today. I want to challenge something that is baked into how most organizations think about AI governance. Most of the conversation happens in the wrong rooms. It happens in legal, where people are reading the EU AI Act and trying to map articles to processes. It happens in risk and compliance, where people are adding AI to their existing control frameworks as if it were just another type of software. It happens in IT security, where people are worried about prompt injection and model poisoning. These are not bad conversations. But they are not sufficient. And they are certainly not the conversations that should be driving your AI strategy. Here is why. AI governance is not primarily a compliance problem. Compliance is a lagging indicator. It tells you whether you met a standard that was written in the past, for conditions that existed in the past. AI is moving faster than any regulatory framework can track. If your AI governance posture is defined by what the regulator requires today, you are always behind. AI governance is not primarily a technology problem either. Yes, there are architectural decisions that matter enormously, and I will come back to those. But the technology team cannot govern AI on their own. They can build the controls. They cannot decide what the organization values, what risks are acceptable, and who is accountable for the outcomes. AI governance is a business leadership problem. Full stop. It is a problem about accountability. About trust. About whether the organization can look a customer, a regulator, or a board member in the eye and say, "We know what our AI is doing, we know why it is doing it, and we are responsible for the outcomes." When something goes wrong, and it will go wrong, the question will not be, did your AI system have guardrails? The question will be, did you know what your AI was doing, and did you exercise appropriate oversight? That is a governance question. And governance starts at the top. Now I want to talk about something that sounds technical but is fundamentally a leadership matter. Your architecture choices are governance decisions. Every decision you make about how AI is deployed in your organization. Which model you use. Where data flows. What access it has. How interactions are logged. Every one of those is a decision about accountability. Let me give you 3 concrete examples. Model selection. When you choose a model, you are choosing a set of behaviors, a training history, a set of biases, and a terms of service agreement. You are also choosing a trust boundary. A model that runs on a third-party cloud service means your data is crossing a boundary. A model running on-premise or in your private cloud means you have more control but more responsibility. Neither choice is automatically right. But both choices have governance implications that your risk and legal teams need to understand before procurement signs the contract. Not after. Data access. This is the one that keeps me awake. AI systems that have broad access to your data estate can do extraordinary things. They can also leak extraordinary things. The principle of least privilege. Giving a system access only to what it needs to do its job is not a technical nicety. It is a fundamental control. When I was working on the deployment of Google Gemini Enterprise, one of the first things we identified was a gap in audit trail coverage. The system could interact with data across multiple domains, and we did not have clear visibility into what it was accessing, when, and why. That is not a technical failure. That is a governance failure that happened to have a technical signature. We fixed it. But it required deliberate architecture decisions, not just adding a tool to a platform and hoping for the best. Logging and audit trails. I have written extensively about this, and I will say it plainly here. Guardrails are not governance. A guardrail stops a bad output. An audit trail tells you what happened, when it happened, who authorized it, and what the system actually did. Guardrails protect you from the outputs you can anticipate. Audit trails protect you from the outputs you cannot anticipate, and from the questions that come afterwards. If your AI system cannot tell you, in a retrievable and reviewable format, what it did and why, you do not have governance. You have hope. Let me put this in context. Most organizations are somewhere on a maturity spectrum when it comes to AI governance. I think of it in 3 broad stages. Stage 1 is reactive. This is where the majority of organizations sit today. AI is deployed. Problems arise. Controls are added after the fact. The governance is mostly informal. A combination of vendor defaults, acceptable use policies, and individual judgment calls. There is no systematic way to know what the AI is doing. Stage 2 is preventive. The organization has started putting controls in place before deployment. There are guardrails. There is a review process. Risk and legal are involved. This is progress. But the controls are mostly output focused. They are designed to stop bad things from being produced. They do not provide accountability for what happened in the process of producing them. Stage 3 is accountable. This is where mature AI governance lives. The organization can answer the following questions at any time: what AI systems are running, what data they have access to, what decisions they have made or influenced, who is accountable for each system, and how that accountability is enforced. There are audit trails. There is oversight. There is a governance structure that scales as AI scales. The gap between stage 2 and stage 3 is significant. And closing it requires deliberate effort at the architecture level. I developed Frame because I kept seeing organizations trying to govern AI without a coherent structure for thinking about it. Frame stands for focus, roles, authority, metrics, and evaluation cycle. Focus is about defining the scope of your AI governance. What systems are in scope? What use cases they cover? And what outcomes they are responsible for. You cannot govern what you have not defined. Focus forces the organization to be specific. Roles is about accountability assignment. For every AI system in your environment, there should be a named accountable owner. Not a team. Not a department. A person. This is uncomfortable for organizations that prefer collective ownership, but collective ownership is diffuse accountability. And diffuse accountability is no accountability. Authority is about who has the power to make decisions, and what decisions require escalation. Who can approve a new AI use case? Who can override an AI decision? Who can shut a system down if something goes wrong? These are governance questions that need to be answered before something goes wrong, not during the incident. Metrics is about how you measure whether your AI is performing within acceptable parameters. Not just technically, but ethically and operationally. What does good look like? What triggers a review? What triggers an escalation? Evaluation is the ongoing cycle. AI systems change over time. Models drift. Use cases evolve. Data distributions shift. Governance that was appropriate at launch may not be appropriate 6 months later. Evaluation builds in the systematic review that keeps governance current. Frame is not a compliance checklist. It is an operating model. It gives you a structure for having the right conversations, making the right decisions, and maintaining accountability over time. But here is what Frame alone does not solve. And this is important. Frame governs your AI estate at the organizational level. It tells you who owns what authority they have, and how systems should be evaluated. What it does not give you is a rigorous method for evaluating the individual AI agent itself, particularly when that agent is not just answering questions but taking autonomous action in your organization. That is where AI Agent Evaluation Framework or AAF comes in. Most organizations are now deploying AI agents. Not just AI assistants that answer questions, but agents that take actions. Booking meetings, sending communications, processing transactions, making decisions, and chaining multiple steps together without a human in the loop at every stage. The governance frameworks we have borrowed from software quality assurance are not built for this. Error rates, latency, uptime. These are necessary but insufficient when you are dealing with a system that has real decision authority and real workflows. Here is the reframe I want you to take away from this section. An AI agent that executes tasks autonomously, interacts with your organizational systems, and produces outputs that affect your customers, your staff, or your operations, is not a software component. It is closer in character to a member of the workforce. And it should be evaluated accordingly. Against defined performance expectations. On a structured set of dimensions. On a regular appraisal cadence. That is the core premise of AAEF, the AI Agent Evaluation Framework. It is designed for practitioners who need a rigorous, repeatable method for assessing AI agent performance in production environments. But before I walk you through the framework, I want to address the objection I hear most often when I talk about AI agents operating with autonomy. And I want to address it directly, because I think it reflects a genuine instinct that deserves a serious answer. The objection is this: we don't trust AI to make decisions. We want a human in the loop approving every action. I understand that instinct. For some processes, it is absolutely right. A large payment transfer, a decision to terminate a contract, a communication going out under a senior executive's name. These warrant human review. No argument from me there. But here is what experience tells us about what actually happens when you apply human-in-the-loop approval to high-volume or time-sensitive decisions. It becomes a rubber stamp. I have seen it repeatedly. You build a workflow where a human must approve every AI-generated action. In week 1, they read every item carefully. By week 4, the volume is high, the decisions are coming fast, and the approval becomes a reflex. Click, click, click. Approve, approve, approve. The human is technically in the loop. But they are not exercising judgment. They are providing a legal fig leaf. That is not governance. That is theater. Now let me give you a different analogy. Think about an autonomous vehicle. Imagine you are in a self-driving car. And the governance model requires you to approve every decision the car makes. Every left turn. Every lane change. Every speed adjustment. Every braking event on a busy highway. The car can make thousands of micro-decisions per minute. It is processing sensor data, predicting the behavior of other vehicles, and responding to road conditions faster than any human can consciously follow. If you required human approval at that granularity, you would not have a safer vehicle. You would have a vehicle that cannot function. And a human desperately rubber stamping decisions they cannot meaningfully evaluate, at a pace that makes thoughtful oversight impossible. The same logic applies to AI agents in high-volume enterprise workflows. Human oversight is essential. But it has to be designed intelligently. The right model is not approve every action. The right model is: define the authority boundaries clearly. Let the agent operate within those boundaries. Monitor its behavior rigorously. And require human review at meaningful decision points. When the agent reaches the edge of its authority, when its performance profile changes, or when the stakes of a decision exceed a defined threshold. That is the governance design AAEF enables. Structure the evaluation, not the micro-approval. AAEF evaluates agents across 5 dimensions. Task competence is whether the agent can actually do what it was deployed to do, accurately, completely, and within acceptable quality bounds. This is not about general capability. An agent is competent or not competent relative to its specific deployment. Judgment quality is how the agent handles ambiguity, edge cases, and situations outside its explicit task specification. Does it know when to escalate to a human? When to seek clarification? When to decline to act? Poor judgment quality is a governance risk, not merely a performance gap. Boundary adherence is whether the agent operates within its defined authority. This is a binary governance measure. The agent either operated within its sanctioned scope or it did not. Boundary violations require review regardless of outcome. A boundary violation that happened to produce a good result is still a boundary violation. Collaboration effectiveness is the quality of the agent's interaction with your human team members and other systems. Are its outputs clear and useful? Do its escalations add value? Does its behavior support or disrupt human oversight? Improvement trajectory is whether the agent's performance is improving, stable, or degrading over time. This is the dimension that tells you whether you have an agent that is maturing in its role or one that is drifting toward a profile that requires intervention. Based on these 5 dimensions, AAEF assigns each agent one of 4 performance profiles. Operational means the agent is performing within acceptable bounds across all dimensions. Standard oversight applies. Developing means the agent is performing adequately on core dimensions but has identified gaps. Enhanced monitoring and a defined improvement plan are required. Restricted means there are significant performance or boundary concerns. The agent's authority scope is reduced pending remediation. Under review means serious concerns require suspension of autonomous operation pending full assessment. And the appraisal cadence matters. AAEF structures reviews across 3 time horizons. A 30-day early operational check focused on boundary adherence and baseline competence. A 90-day first substantive assessment where the performance profile is assigned. And then an ongoing quarterly or biannual cycle with continuous monitoring between reviews. The reason the cadence is structured this way is important. An AI agent in early deployment is not yet expressing its full performance profile. Governance decisions made at 30 days are preliminary. Governance decisions at 90 days are informed. Now, I want to be clear about how Frame and AAEF work together, because the relationship between them is not optional. Frame sets the organizational governance context. The focus, roles, authority, metrics, and evaluation structure within which AI systems are deployed. AAEF provides the evaluation methodology for individual agents operating within that context. Frame without AAEF lacks agent-level evaluation rigor. AAEF without Frame lacks organizational governance context. You need both. Both frameworks are published on GitHub under Creative Commons license, free for non-commercial use. I encourage you to check it out. I spend a lot of time working with boards and senior leadership teams on AI strategy and governance. And one of the most common problems I see is that leaders do not know what questions to ask. They know enough to know that AI matters. They are not always sure what accountability for AI actually looks like in practice. So let me give you the questions. These are the questions a well-informed board member or senior leader should be able to get clear answers to from their technology and risk teams. 1. What AI systems are operating in our environment today, and who is accountable for each one? This sounds basic. You would be surprised how many organizations cannot answer it fully. Shadow AI, tools adopted by individual teams without formal approval, is pervasive. I have seen organizations that believed they had 3 AI tools in production. When they did a proper audit, they found 19. The other 16 were being used across business units, connected to live data, making real decisions, with no named owner, no approved use case, and no governance at all. If you do not know what is running, you cannot govern it. 2. What data does each AI system have access to, and is that access appropriate? The answer should not be everything it needs. It should be a specific, reviewed, and justified scope of access. A useful forcing question for your technology team is this: if this AI system were compromised or malfunctioned tomorrow, what data could it have exposed, modified, or exfiltrated? If the answer is uncomfortable, your access controls need review. 3. Can we produce an audit trail of AI decisions today, if a regulator asked? Not a report. Not a summary. A trail. A specific, retrievable record of what the system did, when, on whose authority, and based on what inputs. If a regulator called you this afternoon and said, "We need to understand every AI-assisted lending decision your system made in the past 90 days. Could you produce that?" If the honest answer is no, or not completely, or it would take several weeks, you have a problem that exists right now, before any incident has occurred. 4. What signals would tell us something is going wrong, and who is watching for them? This is the question most organizations answer poorly, because they interpret it as, what guardrails do we have? But guardrails tell you when the system produced a bad output. Signals tell you when the system is drifting toward producing bad outputs, before the damage is done. Let me give you a concrete example. You have an AI system that handles customer service routing. It classifies incoming requests and directs them to the appropriate team. In month 1, it routes 94% of requests correctly. By month 4, that figure has drifted to 88%. No single decision has been catastrophically wrong. No guardrail has been triggered. The system is technically operational. But something has changed. Maybe customer language has shifted. Maybe a new product category was introduced that the model was not trained on. Maybe the underlying data distribution has moved. A 6 percentage point drift in routing accuracy at scale means thousands of customers per month being directed to the wrong team. Experiencing delays. Calling back. Escalating. Your customer satisfaction scores start to slide. Your frontline teams are absorbing the friction. And nobody has connected those dots back to the AI system, because no alarm went off. That drift is a signal. The question is whether you had a threshold defined, someone watching for it, and a process to escalate when it was crossed. That is what mature AI monitoring looks like. Not waiting for a catastrophic failure. Watching for the early indicators that the system's performance profile is changing. In AAEF terms, this is the improvement trajectory dimension. Is the agent improving, stable, or degrading? If it is degrading, even gradually, that is a governance event, not just a technical issue. 5. What is our plan when something goes wrong? Note I said when, not if. Every AI system will produce an undesirable outcome at some point. What is your incident response plan for an AI failure specifically? Who has the authority to suspend the system? How do you communicate with affected customers or counterparties? Who leads the post-incident review? And critically, how do you distinguish between an isolated error that warrants a review and a systemic failure that warrants suspension? If you do not have clear answers to those questions today, the time to develop them is not during an incident. If your teams can answer all 5 of those questions clearly and confidently, your governance posture is strong. If they cannot, you have work to do. Let me close the substantive section with a few lessons from the field. Governance that starts late costs 10 times as much to retrofit. Every organization I have seen try to add governance to a system that is already in production has faced the same problem. You are negotiating with a running system. The teams using it are dependent on it. The data pipelines are built. The workflows are embedded. Governance by retrofit is governance by compromise. Build it in from the start. The procurement moment is a governance moment. When you are evaluating an AI product or platform, the governance questions I outlined earlier should be part of the evaluation criteria. Not an afterthought. Not something legal reviews after the business has already committed. The architecture of the product shapes your governance options. Know that before you sign. The accountability gap is usually at the middle. Boards are increasingly aware of AI risk. Frontline teams are living with AI day to day. The gap is often in the middle. The business unit leaders and senior managers who are responsible for the systems but have not been given a clear accountability framework. Frame is designed to close that gap. AI agents are not just a technology upgrade. They are a workforce governance challenge. And AAEF gives you the method to meet that challenge. Structured appraisal, clear performance profiles, and an escalation path when an agent is no longer performing within acceptable bounds. The lesson from the field is simple. Governance becomes more expensive the later you introduce it. The organizations succeeding with AI are not treating governance as a control function. They are treating it as part of architecture from day one. Let me leave you with this. We are at an inflection point in the relationship between organizations and AI. The technology has moved faster than our institutions. Faster than our governance frameworks. Faster than our leadership mental models. And the organizations that are going to thrive in the next decade are not necessarily the ones with the most sophisticated AI. They are the ones that have earned trust. From their customers, their regulators, their employees, and their boards. That their AI is governed responsibly. Trust is not built by having guardrails. Trust is built by being accountable. Accountability requires knowing what your systems are doing. It requires having named owners. It requires audit trails that can withstand scrutiny. It requires leaders who ask hard questions and expect real answers. And when your AI is not just a tool but an agent acting in your name, it requires a rigorous method for evaluating that agent's performance and making governance decisions based on evidence, not assumption. Frame gives you the organizational structure. AAEF gives you the agent-level evaluation rigor. Together, they give you a governance posture that can scale with your AI deployment. That can answer the hard questions from regulators and boards. And that can earn the trust of the people your organization serves. The work itself. The hard, unglamorous work of embedding governance into architecture, culture, and appraisal practice, that is on you. But here is the good news. Organizations that get this right early will have a structural advantage that is very hard to replicate quickly. Governance is a moat. Accountability is a differentiator. You did not come here today because AI is interesting. You came here because AI matters. To your business, your stakeholders, and the people whose life your organizations touch. Govern it like it matters. We have spent the half hour talking about models, data, architecture, governance, accountability, and agents. But ultimately, AI governance is not about technology. It is about decisions. Every model we deploy reflects a set of choices. Every dataset we use reflects a set of priorities. Every agent we authorize reflects a delegation of responsibility. The question is not whether AI will become part of our organizations. It already has. The question is whether we will govern it deliberately or discover its consequences later. The organizations that succeed in the next decade will not necessarily have the most advanced models. They will have the clearest accountability. They will know who owns the outcome. They will know how decisions are made. They will know when to trust the machine and when to challenge it. Because in the end, governance is not about slowing innovation. Governance is what allows innovation to scale safely. And architecture is not about technology. Architecture is how leadership decisions become operational reality. The future of AI will not be determined by algorithms alone. It will be determined by the quality of the decisions we make today. Thank you.